Today's broadcast is guided by the teachings of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, one of humanity's most profound contemplations on consciousness, death, and rebirth. This text does not speak merely about what happens after death. Rather, it reveals something far more unsettling and transformative: how the mind encounters itself when all familiar structures collapse. Our focus today is a very specific moment, the third dawn after death, when the deceased stands at the very threshold of rebirth. It is a moment not of judgment by an external power, but of recognition or failure of recognition by consciousness itself. My hope is that today's journey will lead you to reconsider not only death, but life, identity, and the nature of awareness itself. If you wish to continue this exploration into the deepest layers of mind and meaning, I invite you to subscribe. Your single click allows this journey of inquiry to continue. According to Tibetan tradition, on the third morning after death, a monk begins to read aloud, not for the living, but for the dead. He speaks directly to the consciousness that has just lost its body. Now listen, O noble one, you have already cast off the shell of flesh. You drift alone upon the winds of consciousness. Do not be afraid. All forms that now appear before you are nothing but reflections of your own mind. The light you see is not the true light. It is the deceptive glow born of your own desire. At this point, something extraordinary happens. The deceased does not yet feel dead. He looks at his hands. There is no substance, no solidity. And yet, strangely, he can still reach out. He can still feel. He senses movement, vibration, a trembling in the air itself. Confusion arises. Is this death? Everything seems gone, yet I remain. Someone is calling him. The voice feels unfamiliar, yet hauntingly intimate. And then the light appears. It is overwhelmingly bright. It pulls him toward itself and terrifies him at the same time. He is not ready. His mind is still heavy with attachments. The face of his child, the shape of his home, the sound of his name. All of it is dissolving, slipping away toward the other side. At this moment, we must pause and ask a crucial question. Why does the deceased experience this on the third dawn? Why this particular confusion, this particular confrontation? The Tibetan Book of the Dead does not view death as an ending. It sees death as the final examination of awareness, the last opportunity for consciousness to recognize its own true nature. That is why, at this exact moment, the monk speaks again. Now listen, O noble one. Though you have left the body, your mind still searches for it. Realize that your consciousness is empty, like open space. Everything you see now is nothing more than a projection of your own mind. The purpose of this experience is precise and uncompromising: to awaken the deceased to the truth that the self he believes he is has never been solid. The body has vanished, but the sense of I remains. This state is known in Buddhism as the Bardo. Body, an intermediate form of existence in which physical matter has dissolved, yet habitual identity persists. When the text says, he looks at his hands and finds no substance, yet he still touches and feels, it describes a condition in which form has disappeared, but consciousness has not yet awakened. The body is no longer material, but karmic momentum, the accumulated force of past actions, continues to generate perception, like a lingering echo after a sound has ended. These sensations are not real in the physical sense. They are phantom perception shadows cast by consciousness, attempting to grasp what no longer exists. The Book of the Dead describes this phase as the mind trying to seize its own shadow. At its core, this is not fear of death. It is fear of non-existence, the desperate wish to continue being someone. Then comes the light. The light is too strong. It draws me in, but I am afraid. This light is not a hallucination. In Tibetan Buddhism, it is known as the clear light of the Dharmakaya, the pure, original nature of mind itself. On the third day after death, consciousness can no longer cling to the body, and for the first time it encounters its own ground, its source. But the deceased recoils. Why? Because that light does not promise survival of the ego. It signifies its complete dissolution. To merge with that light is to abandon the story of me. Still bound by karmic habits, the deceased mistakes liberation for annihilation. Salvation feels like destruction. He wants to remain someone. He wants to return to something. Thus, the light appears not as refuge, but as threat. The text tells us he still has many attachments to this world: the face of his child, his home, his name. This is what Tibetan Buddhism calls the wind of karma. These attachments are not emotional in a sentimental sense. They are forces. They are the very currents that push consciousness back into the cycle of rebirth. The monk's voice grows stern at this point. The moment you think of your child, your wealth, your name, you will fall again into the darkness of ignorance. All of these are illusions created by your own mind. Return to your original light. This moment is a gateway between ignorance and awakening, between rebirth and liberation. If attachment is released, consciousness dissolves into light. If grasping remains, it is swept once more into the wheel of becoming. The third dawn after death is therefore a moment of profound tension. The belief I have not died clashes with the terror everything is gone. Through this ordeal, Tibetan Buddhism seeks to guide the deceased toward a single realization that what he has been chasing his entire life was never outside him. The monk reads not to save him, but to remind him, to help him recognize the light not as an enemy, but as his own original mind. The Book of the Dead leaves us with a haunting insight. If the light frightens you, it is because you have not yet recognized your own mind. And so I leave you with this question. The journey beyond fear, the passage through light rather than away from it, is not reserved for death alone. It begins now. If you wish to continue this journey, subscribe, and in the next episode, we will step closer to the gate of that light together. We now arrive at one of the most decisive moments described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the third dawn after death, when the consciousness of the deceased stands at the edge of what Tibetan Buddhism calls Sidpa Bardo, the threshold of rebirth. At this hour, the monk begins his recitation once again, speaking not to a body, but to awareness itself. He says, "Now listen, O noble one, the morning of the third day has dawned. You have abandoned the illusion of flesh, yet the shadows of the mind still cling to you. When the fire of desire ignites, you will be swept back into the waves of rebirth. This must be cut away. The worlds of pleasure you behold, those golden palaces, are nothing but phantoms. What follows is not a vision imposed by gods or judges. It is a vision generated by the deceased's own mind. The deceased sees his home. He sees his wife, weeping. She calls his name, but he cannot answer. He tries to speak, but no sound reaches her. He reaches out. His hand passes through her shoulder. He is still here, yet she has already begun to let him go. This is the first wound of death. Not separation from the world, but the realization that the world can continue without you. Then, suddenly, another vision erupts. A brilliant golden gate opens before him. Behind it lies everything he failed to attain in life. Wealth, power, youth, recognition, honor. All of it beckons. All of it promises fulfillment. And yet, from deep within his awareness, a familiar voice arises. All that you see is hollow illusion. The moment you grasp it, you will fall once more into suffering. At this point, we must ask an essential question. Why does the mind conjure visions of the spouse, wealth, power, youth, and glory on the third day? According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the third day marks the moment just before consciousness enters Sidpa, Bardo, the state in which rebirth becomes inevitable. It is the point at which awareness is pulled most forcefully by tanha, craving, attachment, desire. The text describes a precise psychological progression. The first day is confusion. Consciousness does not yet recognize that life has ended. The second day is confrontation, terrifying lights, sounds, and the collapse of the familiar self. The third day is temptation, the powerful resurgence of the wish to live again. On this day, the deceased does not flee from fear. He turns toward longing. At this stage, consciousness projects what it loved most in life: the spouse, the family, status, possession, youth, authority. These are not random images. They are the deepest gravitational centers of the former life. The Book of the Dead warns, all that you loved will reappear before you. It is not light, but shadow. Not reality, but the mirror of desire. The moment you grasp it, the wind of rebirth will swallow you. The meaning is precise. The wife, the home, the golden gate. None of these are objectively real. They are karmic images generated by the accumulated weight of attachment. They reveal exactly what the deceased could not release while alive. In that moment, the thought arises: I am still here. I can still have. I can still be. This is the most dangerous illusion of all, because attachment summons the wind of karma, what the text calls karma lung. This wind does not punish. It propels. It carries consciousness back toward embodiment, toward the womb, toward another cycle of birth and decay. And this brings us to a deeper question. Why is pleasure the form of the final illusion? Tibetan Buddhism teaches that all cyclic existence arises from the three poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. On the second day, the deceased confronts fear and confusion, anger and ignorance. But on the third day, something far subtler emerges: desire, the whisper. I want to live again. I want to be happy again. This craving is far more dangerous than fear. Fear repels. Desire attracts. Fear may cause withdrawal, but desire makes us reach out. And so the deceased turns away from the path of light and steps toward the golden gate created by his own longing. This moment is not a divine judgment. It is a self-administered examination. The final test is not imposed from outside. It arises from within. The Book of the Dead states, if you choose the shadow over the light, you will be born again into darkness. But if you look directly at the shadow, it dissolves, and the gate of liberation opens. Thus, the visions of wealth, power, and pleasure are not meant to deceive. They are meant to reveal. They expose what remains unresolved, what still binds the mind to becoming. This is why advanced meditators recognize a similar pattern at the end of deep practice. As stillness deepens, the last illusion of self often appears, a subtle image of identity, importance, or desire. If recognized as illusion, awakening completes itself. If mistaken for truth, the mind re-enters its habitual loops. Most consciousnesses, the text tells us, choose familiarity over freedom. They believe the illusion. They walk willingly back into it. And so the warning is spoken one final time. See the beloved, but do not grasp. See the golden gate, but do not enter. It is the shadow of light, the husk of desire. The third day after death teaches us something unsettling and universal. Rebirth is not forced upon us. It is chosen again and again by what we refuse to let go. In the next stage, we will see what happens when the wind of karma finally carries consciousness forward. Until then, ask yourself, if everything you desire appeared before you now, would you recognize it as light or as shadow? As the third day draws to a close, night descends not only upon the world of the living, but upon the journey of the departed consciousness itself. Once more the monk speaks, his words now softer, yet more decisive than before. He says, "Now listen, O noble one. The night of the third day has arrived. You now enter again into the ocean of dreams. If you do not lose the center of your mind, you yourself will become light and find the path. But if attachment and longing remain, you will take on another body, whether human, animal, or divine. Wherever you go, it will be the destination chosen by your own consciousness." At this moment, the struggle ceases. The deceased responds not with panic, but with quiet recognition. I must go. All sounds begin to fade. The voices, the visions, even the fear itself recede into distance. And yet within him, something stirs, a subtle vibration, a gentle resonance, like the first movement of life in a womb. Is this the beginning of another existence, or is it simply another image created by the mind? The deceased cannot know, but one truth has become unmistakably clear. Everything light and darkness, fear and desire, heaven and terror, was a road shaped by his own mind. Nothing was imposed from outside. Nothing was decided by judgment or punishment. It was consciousness, moving according to its own tendencies. And now the deceased steps onto that road, a place where light and darkness are no longer opposed, but intertwined, where becoming begins again. This brings us to the final teaching. The world after death is not a distant myth, nor a mystical realm reserved for another time. It is a reflection of the mind already present within us, here and now. The Bardos, described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, are not merely post-mortem states. They are transitions we pass through repeatedly in life, in loss, in fear, in transformation, and in moments when identity dissolves and reforms. If today's reflection has offered you even a moment of calm, even a small shift in how you view life and death, I invite you to share that awareness by subscribing, by liking, by continuing this journey together. Because even now, in this very moment, we are walking the boundary between living and dying, between sleep and awakening. Do not fear the light. That light has always been you.